So I hope to connect with you all while I'm here, but if I don't connect with you, my contact information is here. Please do reach out to me. There's a lot of things I'm going to be giving you, so if you have questions, concerns, thoughts, I'd love to chat. And I am the manager of GuideStar social media, so if I can connect with you online, I'd love to do that as well. So I love to see all the hands of people who have used GuideStar. How many people have used GuideStar this month? Okay, that's a good chunk. So some of you may know some of this, some of you may not. Some of you may know us, but not exactly what we do, so I'm just going to go into that really quickly. We collect we collect information from the IRS on every single tax-exempt organization in the country, with the exception of churches and schools, because they don't have to file anything with the IRS. So we have 2 million nonprofits on our site, and our job is to turn that data into knowledge and actually help people make really informed, good decisions based on that information. We collect data from the IRS, that's our bread and butter, and we buy that information from the IRS. A lot of people think that the IRS just gives it to us. That's our biggest expense. We also get it from nonprofits themselves through our GuideStar Exchange program, which I'm going to talk about. And we have partnerships where they give us more data. And I want to talk about what data means for a second. When I first got to GuideStar 3 years ago, I thought data meant financials and just numbers. It doesn't. Data is anything having to do with a nonprofit. Your stories, your photos, your videos, any building block that makes you an organization is a piece of data, and we collect it, or we want to collect it. So my job today is to help you learn how to better fundraise, and to do so with empathy in mind, and to do so without increasing your workload, which we all know we have a difficult time and a difficult task as it is. So again, I want you to walk away being able to make changes today. That is what I'm hoping to have. Okay, so one of GuideStar's job is to get past the overhead ratio. Does anybody know what that is? So a lot of nonprofits focus on it, and a lot of donors look for it. And when we say overhead, we mean the amount that the nonprofit puts towards administrative costs, whatever that expense is. And the problem is that, maybe 20 years ago, there started this fund where if you have a low overhead ratio, there started kind of a trend that if you have a low overhead ratio, you must be a good nonprofit. And we are coming out, and we're coming out loudly to say that is not true. Thank you. Thank you. And to that end, we actually think more nonprofits need to spend more on overhead. And we want you to do that too. We really think that nonprofits are in this world where they are starving themselves as enterprises. The Stanford Social Innovation Review came up with that term, and we couldn't agree more. There's this cycle where they don't invest in themselves, nonprofits don't invest in themselves, they can't get the resources they need, and then funders start looking for low overhead ratio as something to fund, and it just gets into this nasty cycle. So we think it's really time to get past the overhead ratio as a sector, because we're going to drive the donors to that as well, and to start thinking about impact. That's really what it's about, nonprofit results. Thank you. Oh, I love hearing that. So let's talk about what donors look like today. They're really savvy. And it's a tough economy, and they want us to use their hard-earned money well. That's not surprising to anyone, I'm sure. The problem is that there are more channels than ever asking for donations. There are 2 million nonprofits with some of them overlapping missions. And in effect, there's this perfect storm where nonprofits can't break through the clutter. There's more advertising messages. There's more social media reaching out to them. So donors are having a really hard time finding nonprofits that they want to support, and nonprofits are having a really hard time connecting with the donors and the funders. So in 2009, Hope Consulting, which is a boutique research firm, and I encourage you to check them out. It's hopeconsulting.us. They conducted research called Money for Good, and they looked at people with household incomes of more than $80,000, which make up 75% of charitable donations from individuals. And then they had a special focus on people with household incomes of more than $300,000, because there's a disproportionate share of charitable contributions. So they looked at how nonprofits could more effectively obtain donations from these groups, and how a greater share of donations could be funneled to the highest performing nonprofits. Those were that were having the greatest impact. So one of the most important findings from this research was that a majority of donors, almost all donors, care about impact. They care that their money is being used wisely. But almost all of them do not do research to find those nonprofits. So only a third of donors research before they find where to give their money, and only 5% are looking for the nonprofits that are actually doing the best work, and not necessarily the best fundraising machines, right? Those aren't necessarily always the ones doing the best work. So in 2011, GuideStar partnered with Hope Consulting to do the next iteration of this research, which we aptly named Money for Good 2 because it was brilliant. And we started to think about how could we funnel more money to the highest performing nonprofits, the ones that were really doing the best work. So we know that they don't do research, but they care deeply about impact. So how do we bridge that gap? What we found was that there were 5 pieces of information that all donors and funders want, and I'm going to go into what they all are. So those are financials, and that is the information on your IRS 990, which is what we do. Legitimacy, meaning is it a legally registered IRS with a nonprofit? Believe it or not, donors do care about that because they want to deduct it from their taxes. And we all know that the Pension Protection Act of 2006 was a game changer. If you don't file your 990 for 3 consecutive years, your tax-exempt status is automatically revoked. And that was a huge, huge issue for small organizations and continues to be. And they also care about the mission or cause. I mean, that makes sense. We're all trying to solve real-world problems, and that's why they give their money. And they care about basic organization information, which essentially means where they're headquartered, who's their CEO, what kind of programs they are, just the kind of nuts and bolts of the organization. And all of this information is at guidestar.org/moneyforgood. So there's a ton of research findings there, and I encourage you to check it out. And I want to point out that as a result of this Money for Good 2 research, we actually, GuideStar reformatted our nonprofit report. So if you go to guidestar.org and you look up a nonprofit, you now see those 5 pieces of information at the very top in what we call the quick view summary. If we have a piece of information, there's a green check mark, which means we've got it, and you can click on it and investigate and find the backup information. If we don't, there's a yellow exclamation point. And I spend a lot of time explaining to reporters and others that a yellow exclamation point does not mean it's a bad charity by any means. But it does mean we don't have that piece of data. And we are trying to get nonprofits to give us more information because we know that donors and funders want it. So we're kind of pushing and pulling at the sector at the same time. And it's my job as a PR person at GuideStar to talk about this. A lot of people think that we're a watchdog. A lot of people think that we're a charity evaluator, and we're not. We never have been, and we never will be. We know that people come to the giving decision with a variety of values, and it's not up to us to decide what those are. So our job is to collect as much information as we can from as many sources as we can. And we put that on our site, and 99% of the 10 million visitors we're going to have at guidestar.org this year use it for free. And that's our public mission, and that's something that we pledge to continue. Okay, so what does this all mean for you? So we know that donors care about impact, but they're not going to look for it. So what can you do as a nonprofit to actually help bridge that gap? We wrote a guidebook called More Money for More Good, and it's actually in your tote bag. Everybody has it. This is the hard copy. It's very small, as you can see, but there's a lot of good information here. And you can also download it for free at guidestar.org/moneyforgood, and I encourage you to do that. I'm going to talk about some tips that kind of get you started, and hopefully you walk away, again, feeling really empowered. But again, if you have questions or concerns, please, and we're going to have a Q&A at the end, too, so I'd love to talk about that. So everything I'm going to talk about falls in these 3 umbrellas: to collect, communicate, and connect. So when I say collect, I mean you need to collect your impact information. And it seems really daunting to do that. We have 2 million nonprofits in this country, and they have very different missions. There could be some overlapping, and we talk about what we do very, very differently. So how do we think about impact, and how do we start talking about it? The fact is, it's not impossible. You can start collecting your information now, and the best initiative to do that is something called Charting Impact, and you can see it at chartingimpact.org. And GuideStar partnered with BBB, Wise Giving Alliance, and Independent Sector to create this a couple years ago. It asks nonprofits these 5 questions. which seems simple. You're just answering 5 questions, but those are heady questions. And the process of answering these questions actually leads you through a strategic thinking process. So if your organization doesn't have a strategic plan, this will help you get there. If you do have a strategic plan, I did GuideStar's Charting Impact Report. I just copied and pasted big pieces. And talk about collaboration, the final result of this is a huge collaboration because you get your board members to sign on. You get outside stakeholders to think about it and to give you information. So this really is the only initiative of its kind out there. It gives us kind of an even playing field when we're going to talk about impact, and it's free. And frankly, you don't have to do it alone. You can work with the team, which can be really helpful in thinking through this. There's a ton of benefits for doing this. I mean, for me, it can shine a light on what you still need to do. And at the very minimum, if you don't talk about impact, you're missing the boat when it comes to donors and funders. So this is kind of step 1 in doing so. Okay, so charting impact is one way to think about your impact. The GuideStar Exchange is another, but that actually falls into another category, so we'll talk about that in a second. And the third is, and I want to step back. Charting impact, once you have completed the report at chartingimpact.org, you get a unique URL to that report, and you can put that in your direct mail solicitations and on your website, and we actually encourage you to put it out there pretty widely. And that's exciting, again, because you can send out a direct link to something that talks about your impact. Okay. So the last tip I wanted to talk about is user reviews and stakeholder reviews. So that's really important. Let's think about this for a second. Who, to come to this event, used TripIt or Yelp to figure out what you're doing? A couple people. Who has looked at a review before you bought something on Amazon, for instance? It's everybody. That's the way it's going, and you're like the majority of consumers online who are actually trying to figure out the real-world solutions to a set problem. Great Nonprofits is a platform that allows you to do just that. So you, as a nonprofit, can go and say, give my nonprofit a review, and anybody who's a non-paid stakeholder can do that. So that's your interns, your board members, your volunteers, clients, customers, things like that. They give a star rating, a 1 to 5 star rating, and then they can give you comments to actually talk about your impact or your success or what have you. And this really gives you the ability to have people talk about your nonprofit on a very human scale. Every nonprofit has stories, but not every nonprofit knows how to talk about that. This gives you the ability to have someone else frame your story. It's free, and they can do that anytime they want. You can send out a link to your write a review section of your nonprofit report, and it's on GuideStar as well. So it's on greatnonprofits.org and GuideStar. And you can get people to really think and talk about your nonprofit. It can seem scary. Nobody wants to have a negative review. And there are times when there's frankly wrong information that someone sends if you get a low review. There's some guidelines there to help you through that. First of all, there are civil speech guidelines. So people have to, at the minimum, stay within certain standards when they're giving your nonprofit a review. At the same time, nobody expects perfection. Frankly, that's kind of hokey. If you have nothing but positive reviews, it could seem almost impossible. So I think negative reviews and constructive ones are as good as critical, or as good as glowing. That said, you have the ability to comment on each one and really take them one at a time and answer them. And just kind of a side anecdote, I run GuideStar social media, and more Facebook and Twitter in particular are becoming venues for complaints and concerns and questions. And I'm not a customer service person, I'm communications, so I'm learning really quickly in how to do it. And what I have found to be the best is to say I'm sorry, because no matter what, they're upset. To fix it if I'm wrong, a good chunk of the time, they're actually wrong. They don't realize that they have the information, or they think that we're, Charity Navigator or someone else. And I'm able to correct it on this very public venue. And I'm just being me. I go on GuideStar USA and I say, I'm sorry you're having this problem. Here's the real answer. And then what I have found is our fans, the other people that follow us on Facebook and Twitter, they've jumped in and said, you're wrong, buddy. you need to get this straight. And it's been really powerful. And if we are wrong, it's really nice to be able to, in this very public way, say, we got it wrong, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to change it because of you. It's been really powerful, and that's what the review process can do. And frankly, you can put these great nonprofit reviews anywhere. You can put them on your website and on your social media pages, etc. So there's all different kinds of reviews. There's the self-reported impact that you give on your 990, and GuideStar has a impact paragraph that you can give. And then there's the kind of stakeholder reviews that we talked about through great nonprofits. And then there are expert reviews, which is another avenue for talking about your impact. These are all partners that do this kind of work. Some of them are US-based charities, some of them focus on international-based charities. All of them, with the exception of Philanthropedia, actually do their analysis in-house, so they consider themselves experts. But Philanthropedia has a different model. I thought I had more stuff, I didn't. So we actually acquired them in 2011, but they have their own brand, they stay their own company, and that's on purpose. We knew there was going to be this big shift to impact, so that's why we acquired them, but we want them to have, a subjective and objective point of view, so we don't get involved in the expert ratings. So they actually have a crowdsourced methodology. It's the only thing like that. And they have talked to a variety of experts in the field about particular cause areas. So that's politicians, policymakers, nonprofit leaders, board members, academics, researchers, and they say recommend the best nonprofits, the ones that are actually meeting their mission in a particular cause area. They have researched 37 different causes right now. They have reviewed more than 3,000 nonprofits. They've collected reviews on 20,000 nonprofits, and they have more than 3,000 experts participating. And they have 579 cause areas where nonprofits have been ranked. So go to myphilanthropedia.org and check it out. If you get an expert review, it's just critical for your company. You can really talk about it, and these are experts saying that you're the best at what you do. Okay, so it's not just enough to collect your impact information. You really do have to communicate it. We know that donors want to hear it from third-party groups, but they actually want to hear it from you first. If they're going to do research, they're going to go to your website. That is going to be the key place where they find information. So it's really vital that you have either an impact section on your website or some kind of impact tab or some place where you can start talking about your impact in a really, hopefully, powerful and human way. This also, getting people to do that, it kind of pulls the sector in this direction which we want. So we're encouraging everybody to do this for the push and pull kind of effect, the cause and effect. We want you to do this so that others will do this too. There are many ways to lead with impact. That's your kind of first step. There are all these, again, expert reviews and, medals and badges and third-party accolades. So if you have one of those, get them out there. Put them on your website, make a particular section, get people to talk about it, and get others to talk about it. That's really important. I'll go over some of these. Charity Navigator is actually working to include impact in their 3.0 methodology, so that's new. We had talked about great nonprofits, and we're going to talk about the exchange in a second. The BBB Wise Giving Alliance has an accountability seal. So all of these are kind of third-party accolades that you can push out there and say, hey, others think we're great, which is important. And let's go into the GuideStar exchange. So Money for Good told us that more than half of all donors said that they not only want to use organizations like GuideStar to find information about high-performing nonprofits, but they actually trust our site and others more than going to the nonprofit itself because, again, it's this third-party kind of objective point of view. And our GuideStar Exchange program is the program to do that. So it is free. Anybody can go to GuideStar.org and give us more information. That's all it is. You just give us more information. We ask for it. And actually, last week, we'll get to that now, we revamped what it looked like, and it used to be 18 fields, and now it's 8 fields. So you actually go in and give us key pieces of information. Thank you. I know. I did my own GuideStar Exchange form. It took me 10 hours to do it the last time. It took me 1 hour to do it this most recent time. It's been a lot easier. And you can skip and you can save where you're at. So it's a much more fluid interface, and we're really excited about it. So I'd love to hear from any of you if you've used it. So it's a good time to start thinking about it. And this, again, gives us the ability, GuideStar, we have 10 million people coming to GuideStar.org every year. It gives us the ability to paint your full picture, which we know through Money for Good that donors and funders want. So I'm going to go back a little bit. We then push it out. So once you give us the stuff, it doesn't just stay with us. We have a ton of partners and clients that buy this data from us, or we give the data to. And that helps get your information out where donors and funders are. So if Facebook causes, we power Facebook causes. We power American Express. If someone's working with American Express and they want to give a donation, it's GuideStar data that's using it, and that's from you. That's from your information. So you can not only meet donors and funders on our site and on your site, but on other sites. So it's really powerful. It's this huge, vast network that comes together really easily. Does anybody follow Heather Mansfield on Twitter or on the blog? She's at Nonprofit Orgs. She has more than 600,000 followers, so you might check her out. She's really, really interesting and engaging. And she gave me this quote, and I couldn't not spread it because it's amazing. And she said, basically, you need a GuideStar exchange strategy if you're going to be in the nonprofit sector. So, and check her out. She's great. And I wanted to take a minute for a special announcement. The Office Depot Foundation, which Leon Rubin was central to, just got their GuideStar Exchange seal. And, I mean, this is just a great example of an organization doing it right. So congratulations, Leon, and Office Depot Foundation. Well done. And you can see what it looks like. So if you give us everything we ask for, we give you the seal, which is really the symbol of transparency in the sector. And it's really exciting, and I was really excited to hear that they had just earned their seal. And then if you're part of this process at any level, we give you benefits. We give you fundraising resources. We give you help. There's an online person who online chats all day long. We don't want you to do this alone. We're here to help you, and I'm here to help you too. So if you have questions, please let me know. And you just go to GuideStar, and that's where you start. You click on the Update Nonprofit Report. Okay, so the next step, and really I think almost the most important step, you have to start collecting the impact information. You have to communicate it out there. And then you have to connect with people. And that's not just in time. You have to keep them engaged. Let me get to the research that backs up what I'm about to say. I'm not staying with myself here. So I think one of the most important things to talk about is you need to follow up when you get a donation. You have to follow up to say thank you. And talk about appreciation, which we just talked about. One of the biggest findings we found is, and we'll talk about that, a majority of people said the number one reason donors cite for no longer supporting a nonprofit is that they were solicited too frequently. So you have to follow up, absolutely, because they don't want to just give you a donation and never hear from you, but you have to be really strategic. So the point is to say thank you without soliciting again. Say thank you just for doing it. Let me keep going. Go back to that. We just did that in, I think it was December or January. GuideStar wanted to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. We put out a blog post and an email to everybody that supported us and just said thank you. That was it, and that was over here. We got an overwhelming response. We got more donations because of it. We've actually stayed in contact with most of the people. And here's some of the feedback we got. They just said, I can't believe you did this. This was amazing. Thank you. Way to start my day. So it's just a really good example of how you can connect with people in a very human way that they love. And it can actually spread goodwill, possibly even get you more donations. Here's another way to think about how to connect. You need to think about your donors in terms of their motivations. Probably not surprising to you, these things up here, but what might surprise you is demographics have nothing to do with it. Age, sex, and income, not part of it. You have to figure out what your donors value, and that's how you have to connect with them. And you can't possibly do all six. I mean, you could be superhuman, get it done, but I'm not recommending that. You would have to have tons of different calls to action and messages and, the ability to have 1 million events. You really need to choose 2 to 3 that really that your donors fall into. You figure out their motivations, and it's surprisingly easy to figure out what their motivations are. And if you look at the guidebook, there's tons of examples and case studies of nonprofits that are doing that really well. So these are the 6 donor types. We have a short video on this as well on YouTube, so check it out. And I'm happy to talk to you about these anytime as well. So you have to know your donors, get them where they need to be, target your message, make sure that you're actually hitting their values and their motivations and reaching them where you know that actually is of interest to them, and follow up. Make sure that when they give a donation, they hear from you again, but that you're not trying to stalk them. It's really what it comes down to. So again, go to GuideStar.org. There's a ton of information there. I think we're going to do a Q&A right now, so I just wanted to say thanks for letting me talk. I'm excited to be here.